So how do you communicate when someone is living with dementia and you're supposed to give care? It's not always clear and it's not always easy, particularly if you haven't ever known the person or if they're moving along in the disease and it's more difficult to connect up. But rather than use this just as getting connected, sort of trying to communicate, what I'd suggest is when you first approach and engage the person who has dementia, or at least make the attempt, use it as an assessment tool, a screening device. It'll help you figure out how well they're taking in data, they're processing the data, and they're actually able to respond to data. And this is really critical, both for your interaction, but also when you're sharing information with the care partner about how well they're probably able to do things, understand things, appreciate things, and how well they're going to deal with activities. So let's get started. Let's sort of figure this out a little bit. To connect, what I'm going to suggest to you is use a positive physical approach. And there's a specific sort of strategy with this that allows you to see how do they process visual data, how are they processing auditory data, and how do they react and respond to touch and movement. It's going to give you some nice ways of collecting data so that you'll be able to make some good judgment calls. So as a person has dementia, we know that there's a change in their visual field. They go from a normal geriatric field of about, 145 or so, down to scuba vision, and then binocular vision, and ultimately they have trouble identifying and using objects, and then they're only able to take in and actually use one image, monocular vision, so they lose depth perception. So when we're approaching, what we want to do is back off and come in from the front so they can see us coming. So the first step in the process is pause at the edge of public space. Well, what does that mean? It means that human beings are aware of others in three zones: public, personal, and intimate. Public space is approximately arm's length plus arm's length, or about 6 feet away from the person. That's where the individual is just looking at you. So what I want to do is make sure I'm in the center field of vision, and I'm going to stop moving at 6 feet. I'm going to call the person's name, their preferred name, Mr. Jenkins. Now what I'm looking for there is, can they auditorily locate and pick up on who just spoke to them, localize, and what it means. Now when I do that, I also want to cue them, I want to come in, I want to communicate with you, and let's see what happens next. Hey! Now what you saw was an open hand near my face. This takes into account somebody's increasing limitation and how much they can pay attention to, and it's going to let them see my face and my hand at the same time, and then see the offer. Now, an automatic response to this, an automatic social response, is to offer your hand back to me. That tells me they picked up on the visual cue, they picked up on the auditory, and they're giving me a response. How quickly they're able to do it, and whether they need additional cueing, lets me know how fast the data is being processed by their brain. So I'm starting to pick up a lot of information here. I'll come in. Now the first touch, I want to touch his hand, her hand, and instead of standing, I want to get down in visual range. We know that that visual limitation makes it difficult, but the other thing we know is human beings, like other human beings, a little to the side, not in the front. This is confrontational, and it says to the person who has a limited field, I've got you trapped. And typically what happens is they don't process auditory data so well because they're too busy worrying about what we're looking like and what we're going to do next. So what we want to do is get down into the side. Now when we're down in this position, I'm in great visual contact, and if possible, I'm going to keep that handhold. Now the handhold you want is not a typical handshake, because after we shake hands, we let go. By shaking hands and then locking on the thumb so that their hand sits on top and in your hand, and you have your hand around their palm. It's called hand under hand. It will help you draw their eye to you. And then something really simple, some simple conversational piece. I'm Dr. Jenkins. Good to see you. And then what you can do is start some supportive communication. I'm Teepa Snow, and you're, it's a fill in the blank. I'm from North Carolina, and you're from. It allows me to see, are they processing my data? Are they able to get back and give me back something? I have 3 kids, and you have? Yeah. So rather than just yes/no questions, I'm getting some information about how well they're handling what I'm trying to share. Additionally, making a comment about something they have on. I like your shirt. And they go, oh, okay, yeah. Well, that just tells me that they heard my verbal, they didn't process the content. So I want to tune into that. Frequently, they won't be able to do a lot more with the information I share in the office. But it does mean they do like that social contact. I need to give them that. And then I need to be prepared afterward to make sure I actually share the information in a more structured way, because they're probably not holding on to it. But I don't need to make a big deal of it. Now finally, the last thing you can make sure you do is check out how well they're able to follow and do what you're asking them to do. Get it going. So as you're standing there, rather than just getting up and saying, come with me, you might try, well, let's head on back. Come with me. By standing up yourself, you're actually providing them with some cue, visual cue. Additionally, you might offer concrete choices. Would you rather have this or this? Making choices, that gives you some heads up on how they do with choice decision making. And you could try it verbally, but you can also add visually. Coffee or tea, water or juice. You need to be more tuned into what are ways we can offer choices, because as you find out information, that's going to allow you to help caregivers. Possibly rather than immediately stepping out of the room, tell you what, why don't you take off your jacket? Will give you a sense of how well they process data about task performance. And that's critical for family members who are sometimes struggling, or caregivers who may think a person can't do something, but the challenge really is how we're giving them information. So communication, it's a lot more than words. It's how you choose to look and sound, what you choose to do. Making that connection to the person living with dementia makes a huge difference, not only for them, but also for their caregiver. You will find out a lot. Use that time, that opportunity, as part of your assessment.